What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another week of Every Day We're Covering. CP and SJ with you here to talk the world of wagering. Mostly, of course, college football. Lots of college football headlines here after championship weekend. The playoff bracket is here. We'll talk about that and then some other topics. The Heisman race. We also know the finalists, so we'll jump into that as well. SJ, we thought that we'd probably get some pretty good games championship weekend, and it turned out a lot of them were pretty competitive.
Yeah, and especially those later games, kind of down to the wire in a couple cases, and even one of them, at least in my mind, is closer than I thought it would be,
Mm-hmm.
being the Big Ten contest. But not a bad championship weekend, and we're going to need games like that because as it goes forward, who knows where we're going to be at with how the committee chooses to select the teams. There may be some a little bit of dissension in the ranks if there isn't already. And I know people are getting along pretty well these days, but that could change.
Yeah. There's a
Always see sarcasm there.
yeah, there's a lot more to come with this for sure. So, we'll get into that a little bit here as we move along. We'll get into those picks here for you in just a moment as well. But as we get rolling, we always like to talk about what's powering us through the weekend and what beverages we have along for the ride here. And SJ, what do you got pouring over there this week?
Well, I made the switch here. I guess I'm maybe more of a feeling like a winter mode, even though the actually pretty nice week here weather wise. But just got me a nice little pour of whiskey here, a couple fingers. Just went holidays distillery up north of here in Weston, just north of Kansas City, kind of by the airport area, and they do a good job with pretty much anything they do. No matter if you like vodka, you like bourbon, you like whiskey, like whatever. Tell them you're poison, and they'll pour you a good glass of something. So yeah, this went pretty simple. I just keeping it neat tonight. Figured I might be a little lay low after a pretty hectic weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that a little bit. Yeah, I went a little too many of the fancy beers during the ball games on Saturday. Kind of hit me like a ton of bricks at once. So took it a little bit easier yesterday. Although I did go down to your way to watch the Chiefs game with my boy and my dad. So had to have a few, obviously, as we're tailgating there and getting prepared. So, yeah, we're taking it pretty light. I did pick up some different things along the way over the weekend just to try some stuff as I was, getting stocked up. And I did find this holiday pack. Now, of course, we've given this place a shout out more times than I can count, probably, because Sam Adams always makes good beer. We tend to like their stuff. But I did find a little holiday pack that had a couple of different ones in it. So I was like, we'll give this a shot and try something else. The one that's in there. And actually, they've got one in there that's an old standby. A lot of people were clamoring for its comeback. I haven't really had one yet. I've still got them in the case up there. But there was one they used to brew called Old Fezziwig that people got a passion for here during the holiday season. Didn't pull that one out. That's a little bit more spicy and heavier. So I was trying to go a little lighter. So I went with the Holiday White Ale. This is spiced and citrusy, it says, and not bad. Not my favorite by any means out of their kind of stuff, but it's a nice little change of pace when you're looking for, not something that's not super heavy, but still kind of festive season wise. So that's what I'm trying out here. It's worth a run.
Yeah, heavy and this type of season kind of go together, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're gonna have to. It's a little bit tricky there, but yeah, I'm definitely that's I think I might have tried that one before. It sounds like you said, you can't really go wrong with their options. But yeah, looking to get into the here next couple of weeks, we'll try to find a new porter or something like that, new stout, something a little bit more seasonal. But we'll get back into it heavy. This just it's one of those weekends.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, lots of stuff going on, and we'll get into it here with the games and championship weekend. Starting off with Friday, we didn't do so well till the end of the night. A couple of games didn't go our way. Conference USA. I'm not really sure how this works out when you play a team and you win And then the next time you play them in a conference championship game, you get absolute doors blown off you. But Jacksonville State beat Western Kentucky. And I guess come to find out, they had a couple of guys missing. Western Kentucky did, and I didn't really know that ahead of time. But 52-12 was 52-12 the final. So I had Western Kentucky getting some points, and that was not enough. They were only getting 4.5. And then you were looking for the under total, and obviously that didn't work out. And one team scores 52. So,
well, and the thing about that one was, freaking old Rich Rod, he's pulling out the bag of tricks when they're up 30-some points. So that. I mean, whatever, do what you got to do, bro. Like, you don't care about my pick, but I was just like, I figured, game was in hand in the fourth quarter. I thought now those kind of running out here. Get those unders pretty easily because Western Kentucky wasn't putting up much of a offensively, at least. And nope, sure enough, kept end arounds, reverse passes, whatever he had, he was throwing it at him. So maybe there's a little bit of a bad blood there. Might have to keep an eye on that budding rivalry because it seems like he had something to prove. And I don't know that it affected Jacksonville State's bowl projections all that much. Of course, you win the conference, you get a better, probably going to get a better thing. But with a conference like that, you don't have that many tie-ins anyway. So who knows? He definitely was trying to prove a point, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, and they certainly did. So we were off on that one. Another one we were and I was shocked by this game, just the way it played out. The AAC Army pretty much manhandled Tulane. 35-14 was the final. We talked about how, it's just a couple weeks removed from, feeling real down on Army after that performance they put up against Notre Dame. And then here they are just kind of showing out, doing their thing. We talked about how they're kind of a one-trick pony, but when you do it well and the other team can't stop it, well, then you're going to win games. And that's what they did. Quarterback play was awesome again. They just did a great job of kind of controlling the ball. And it was kind of the opposite the way I saw the game playing out.
For sure. You could have saw Army winning, maybe, a comeback fashion or just kind of making it ugly and winning 14-10 or 14-13. But it was basically just from the kickoff to the very get-go, just totally dominated. And Tulane's played some decent opponents this year where they've stuck in it as the underdog and put up some big numbers as well. So to see them kind of that out of sorts was a little bit surprising. And that was more of it how it played out. Not necessarily, of course, we both thought Tulane would win. But with just a one touchdown spread, of course, a blowout didn't seem likely.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why they play them on the field, because that one, I don't think a lot of people probably saw that coming, and just got to be careful not to put too much stock into that one, because Army's got a big one here, this week. So, but that's the trick there, is not reading into it too much. But sometimes we do, and then we pay for it, like this one maybe.
Yeah. So really surprising. We were laying 4.5 and 6 each of us there, so we lose on that game. Interesting point that I heard brought up by someone else too was the fact that the teams that did have to go play somewhere that probably wasn't the best weather conditions, it did not go their way. And that's be the case for this next game we talk about here too. But I don't know. Maybe there is a little bit something to that. Though obviously those cold weather teams are usually a little bit more comfortable in their home confines than teams coming from the south, and that's how it played out for that game.
Well, even though these are conference championships, quote unquote, it's almost like bowl matchups in some of these cases where with the we always bring up the changing teams within the conference. A lot of these aren't familiar opponents, and that was one of them. It's like, if you've seen Tulane and Army on a ticker or sheet, random non-conference game. No, that's actually the conference championship.
Yeah.
So that's just the thing. There's a lot of that's another curveball with these games. The outdoor sites, the weather, and then also just unfamiliarity, because usually with a conference opponent, you've been playing them for decades, but that's not the case anymore.
Mm-hmm. And for the next one, certainly was a home field advantage for Boise State as they take care of UNLV 21-7. We were laying 4.5 and 4, so we easily get the win there with Boise, and we both kind of felt that that's probably how this thing would go down. Looked like for a minute it was going to be a blowout. I mean, Boise grabbed control of the game early. UNLV, give them credit. They kind of did enough to hang around and at least try to make it interesting. But again, I think it was that road environment, that cold weather conditions that did not help them. And then, of course, you're playing, the best running back in college football and a generational type of player, and he had a great game again. So, tough sledding there for UNLV, and I think that one was, fairly close to how we thought that probably would go.
Of course, based on the pick, that's what we wanted to happen. But from maybe the UNLV perspective, just looking at the game, kind of, overall, there's similar. Seems like whenever they play Boise, they just can't make that big play or can't get over the hump. Like because they were down 14 with, I mean, there was 7-8 minutes left in the game. They had a chance to, you put one in there, and
Hmm.
they, even early in the second half when they bust off that 87-yard run down to like the 5-6 yard line, and they couldn't punch it in from there, and
Hmm.
that would have made it. I mean, that was before they even scored. So at one point it would have been 21-14. Of course,
Yeah.
everything changes and doesn't always line up like that, but still, like it's is there something that they just can't, it's just like they have their number. They just, kind of can't get over. That's the hurdle that kind of holding them back. And now with, the coach moving on there from UNLV, who knows what kind of, maybe that was kind of his, just the white flag saying, these aren't, this ain't for me. I got to move on to greener pastures. But I don't know if that's the type of, he's walking into a hornet's nest there in Purdue. But either way, it was, good for us and still a competitive, good game. Anytime these two teams play, it's always pretty entertaining, despite the score, which usually remains close. But yeah, it was a good game and a good win. Obviously, we had that pick on that one.
Yeah, like that one. We move on then to the Saturday slate. And obviously, I'd like to forget about the first one we're going to talk about. My squad did not have a good day in the Big 12 championship game. Arizona State showed out and played very well. Kind of did their thing, and Iowa State wasn't really able to stop it. So not much you can say about that sometimes. But 45-19 ends up being the final. Of course, my bias pick was just taking Iowa State. You were going for the overs there in that game, and obviously that comes true. Probably, I think we're thinking it's going to be more of a back and forth shootout type of scenario. But Iowa State, kind of made their own bet as far as turning the ball over and giving Arizona State some very short fields in that third quarter. They scored 3 times within, what was it, 5-6 minutes because of those turnovers. So anytime that happens, it's just, the hole just seems to keep getting bigger sometimes, and that's the way it went for the Cyclones. Yeah, but good win for Arizona State, and obviously it did some good things for them, after the fact too.
Yeah, you're right on there with that overs pick. I figured it'd be both teams in the 30s, if not the high 20s minimum. So that was kind of the back and forth, is how I thought. But it was just one of those games. Unfortunately, your team's always somebody's team's gonna be there at some point. It's like an avalanche. Like you just can't stop it. Like it just once, and it's I don't even know if it's like, sure there is maybe a couple you could be like, well, it's kind of like a boneheaded play, but at the same time, it's like those to me were more takeaways than they were like turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a couple here or there, but it wasn't like they were kind of wide open pass to the wrong team. Like they were literally like hitting, forcing fumbles like Arizona State was, and then also the picks that they had. I mean, they were legitimate picks. Like they stepped in front of the receiver or they just took it from him. So I don't think that it was this thing where Iowa State kind of just like fold in the moment type of thing. And just when sometimes you get outplayed and the other team's better than you on that day, and that's all that happened. They play again, who knows what happens. So it was a little just disappointing, obviously, for even if you don't have a team, and it's like you like to see these games like be as competitive as possible, especially in that early window, because now it's like, damn it, we got to wait till 3 o'clock for the next one. And honestly, outside of the pick, I didn't really care for either of those two teams in the 3 o'clock window. So I'm just like, I'll watch it because it's like I guess the showcase game, but I don't know. I'll root for the play, but other than that, can they both lose?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, obviously from being a fan perspective, very disappointed. You'd love to see your team go out in a better fashion than that, and at the same time, I realize too that a couple things go differently at different points of the game, and you do feel like it is a kind of a different contest. I don't feel like they were miles away from being able to play with Arizona State. It's just, yeah, things didn't go well on that day. You had some bad breaks, you had some mistakes, and that's the way it goes. Obviously, still awesome that they were in that moment. The season they've had, and they still got a chance to maybe go win a nice bowl game here. So that's a nice thing. But for Arizona State, it was good enough for them. Showing out a little bit to get themselves into the top four of the playoff bracket. So we'll be talking about that here in a little bit as well. But so yeah, we kind of went 1-1 in that game. Next contest that we need to talk about is the MAC championship, and that did not go our way either. Not with the
No.
score or with the total, unfortunately. Ohio absolutely blows out Miami of Ohio to win it. You were taking Miami of Ohio there, laying a few points, 2.5. 38-3 ends up being the final. I was going for the overs, and it didn't quite get there. It gets close, but not quite home. 41. We were looking for 44.5. So, yeah, that's a bummer when you have the double whammy there. It's a game that nobody wants to watch in the first place, and then you don't come out on the right end of it either.
Well, I mean, that's with probably a lot of the reason that they do try to get those Tuesday night showcases because it's I've said it leading into it, it's a hard league to pinpoint because there's so much like it's kind of like I don't even know what you want to describe it as, but it's just like like the common things like any day it can beat anybody, and like that's true for the most part, but typically everything kind of plays out in the long run. You can kind of see it when it comes to like championships and who actually the best team in this conference. But with the MAC, man, and I know that these teams had to qualify for that, uh, so they actually had to win enough games, of course. But still, you can always see any of those teams whenever you see those logos. It's like I seriously don't know who's going to win, no matter what the record is, or even if they just played recently. It's just
Yeah.
it's really a coin flip. Just there's a lot of familiarity, I think, and then also just like the style of play. It doesn't really like lend itself to like. I mean, this was a blowout, but you don't see a lot of these big blowouts in that conference just because
No.
it's not like a high pace like type of. It's almost kind of like a throwback old school type of football. So, credit to Ohio. Like we said, I thought it was going to be maybe a change of the guard, but not just yet. They're not ready to hand that over yet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good win for them. Yeah, and if you look at comparables, boy, you never would have seen a blowout like that coming. So hard one to pinpoint, like you said. We go to the SEC championship, and it did turn out to be kind of a dogfight, like you had talked about with this game. Kind of expecting it to maybe be a little bit more of the defenses win the day and kind of muck it up type of game, and that's what we got. Obviously, it goes to overtime, so that adds a little intrigue and interest. But as far as being a thriller, it was not.
I mean, the biggest, I guess. I mean, when you want to say the most notable thing that happened, maybe was a quarterback getting hurt. It's kind of like the big play of the game, really, which you don't want to see that ever. But that's kind of what it boiled down to when it was. I mean, it seemed like Texas more so than Georgia, but was able to drive down the field, but they just couldn't really get over that. Get to the end zone and kind of convert in the red zone. And then you have a couple of missed field goals where you look at it now and when it happens, you're always like, maybe it's going to come back to haunt us, but you missed two and you're really thinking like that's going to prove costly and end up doing it because without whatever, you just make one of those, no overtime. You make both, definitely no overtime. So yeah, for some reason Georgia has, I mean, obviously they beat them twice and they know how to beat that Texas team, but it's about as ugly as I thought. And honestly, like without overtime, I guess they wouldn't have gotten the 20s, but I didn't see either team getting to the 20s. It seemed like it was going to be like that. And I mean, I know I'm not saying they're not good teams because they've obviously only lost twice each, but I don't know. When you watch, it's not like one of those times where you're like, oh my God, these teams are amazing. I just don't get that feeling. Like I know their records say differently, but it really doesn't seem like these are like, you know, that they are by record and by ranking and all that, but it doesn't seem like two of like the best teams in the country. But I guess that's just where we are this season.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't feel like those Georgia teams from a couple of years ago where you're like, holy crap, is anybody going to beat this team? Like these guys
Right,
are incredible.
exactly. Yeah, like score at will, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And obviously, give credit to Gunnar Stockton, who has to come into the game, and they became a better team once he came into the game. Oddly enough, your star quarterback goes down, and the guy comes in and gives him a spark. He goes 12 of 16 for 71 yards. He did throw an interception, but he kind of gave him a little bit of a spark they needed to get to that overtime and get the win. And it just goes to show you how wild this game is, because we were a week removed from Georgia needing 18,000 plays to win and get into this game, and now here they are as the second seed in the CFP. So it's just how razor thin that margin is sometimes, I think.
when you talk about the, the backup quarterback coming in, like I stepped away for a minute, came back and, missed because halftime takes like at least 2 hours, and especially with these Dr. Pepper championship or whatever they're doing, these freaking gimmicks at halftime. And it's always long with the conference championship and the bowl games, especially, but it's obscene anymore how freaking how much time it takes. So I was like, I'm gonna get something done that really matters, or, gets, and then I came back and saw that Georgia scored. I'm like, oh, he must have played in the second. I thought maybe Beck came back in and just kept. Nope. Sure enough, it was the backup. So that to come into that spot and kind of go down the field, and orchestrate that drive right away was pretty impressive. But that's kind of about where it ends, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Nothing's impossible, and we have a 1 in 12 chance, obviously. But I just don't see these two teams being there at the end of the season. But I guess we will find out here in a
Yeah.
few short weeks.
Well, it's going to be extra difficult here for Georgia because we don't know if either one of these guys is going to be
Right.
healthy to play now, because Stockton obviously got hurt at the end. Beck had to come in just to that last handoff. And ETN, who scored the game-winning touchdown, he was a game-time decision to play anyways, too. So, yeah, I don't know. Injury is obviously not a great deal there. In Texas, I think they're still, obviously they're right there as far as that league is concerned, but being able to make that one extra play, and who do they really feel comfortable with still here? I think that's still kind of that debate between the two guys with Ewers and Manning at quarterback. Who do they need in there to have the best chance on offense? Sometimes that can be hard to, I think, get your team unified behind a little bit, and it seems to be what they're dealing with just a touch. So it's going to take some work. I had Texas laying 2.5. Don't feel bad about that, obviously, since it goes to OT and they lose. I mean, had their chances to win, but then you had the under, and that was good for us there. So we did okay on that one. The next one, not so good as well. It seems like the smaller leagues, it was wild. They just blowouts. Marshall beats Louisiana 31-3. Somehow we were looking for Louisiana to win that one, so weird game there too.
Well, and that was same with like the Mac. Is like I felt like I was playing it safe and being like the easy pick, and just because I was just trying not to overthink it, and
Yeah.
that's came back to bite, because both those were favorites and they wasn't even close. They got
Mm-hmm.
freaking mollywopped both of them. So that's just I guess the nature of those leagues, and we don't, by choice and also by time, we just don't see enough of those leagues, I guess,
Yeah.
to to make an informed guess, and that our pick showed this week. So,
Yeah.
but those are the ones definitely low confidence. We weren't hammering those babies at all.
No, for sure. And then we moved to the night games. I'm going to go to the Big Ten here first. Oregon wins at 45-37 over Penn State. We were both taking the Ducks there, so that was a win. We just needed a few points of victory and thought it would be at least a score. But I will give Penn State a hell of a lot of credit. They fought back in that game and were kind of neck and neck right in there. Drew Aller played really, really good. They kind of, I think, proved maybe that they do belong in that mix there with some of the best teams in that league. And yeah, I guess I was a little bit surprised by the fight that the Nittany Lions had in them.
Same, because I mean, it looked early on like they were going to get the doors blown off. Oregon kind of scored what, 2 or 3 touchdowns there quick. I think a 21-7 lead or 21-10, something like that early on, and it would have been pretty easy for Penn State just to kind of fold it up and kind of just go home with whatever parting gifts they get there from Lucas Oil. But no, they hung in there, and I don't feel like they. I mean, I know it was close and within a score at the end, but I don't feel like it was like really a threat to win the game. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they got as close as you could get without winning, so it was definitely more of a contest, and that was the one that was. I mean, the team we picked won, so I guess it wasn't a total surprise, but it was surprising the fact that it was as competitive as it was. Penn State definitely. Hey, maybe that. I mean, I know the probably was decided beforehand with some of the information that's leaking out now, but maybe that did keep them. It sounds like they got a decent. If you listen to some of the pundits, got a gift with their draw. I mean, some
Yeah.
some people really thought that Penn State kind of got lucked out there, but I don't know. Either way, I think they showed out for themselves, at least in that game. And that's
Yeah.
whatever happened with the playoff. I think that was a separate discussion, but
Yeah.
everything has to get looped in together these days.
Yeah. Another game that I think we had our trepidation about this one a little bit too, and it does go the way of the Clemson Tigers. Dabo Swinney and his boys find a way to get a win. A long field goal at the very end after SMU rallies to tie the game. 34-31 the final, so Clemson automatically gets into the CFP. And then, of course, we waited to see what would happen with SMU. But, kind of both things, not going to feel too bad about I had the overs in this game, so we hit there. And you were going with SMU, just given 2.5, and they obviously were right in the mix in this contest. But give them credit because they got down early and they didn't let that affect them. They just kept playing, got better, played much better in the second half, and obviously were right there to possibly win this game.
Of course, wanted them to win because I was the pick, but I was more kind of annoyed with the fact that they end up losing in regulation. Like there's no reason that game shouldn't have went to overtime. Yeah. Like you go down and score, and what did they have? Like they had less than 30 seconds, didn't they? Or was it right around there? Like Clemson did, and they kicked off to them. It couldn't have been.
Yeah,
much
it was
more
only
than that.
16 seconds. Yeah.
I mean, there's no way a college team should get down the field and be able to kick a field goal on you in 16 seconds. So that was more like the letdown for me. I was like, you work all your way back, and they put a hell of a drive together themselves there at the end to get the game tying touchdown. Then I will just let them run the kickoff back 40 whatever yards and then complete a couple passes, and there you go. Like it was still a tough kick, and I mean he made it look pretty easy actually. It was a hell of a kick there, but I'm just like that was when I was just like, oh, you got to be kidding me on that one. Like if they lose in overtime, you lose in overtime, but you could not let that freaking game in like that. But I guess that's the way it goes some days. But that had to be really. I mean, even more of a letdown than about as tough of ways you can lose a game with the exception of maybe like a Hail Mary.
Yeah, that's a real gut punch when you work that hard, to rally back in a game and you think you've got it. You're scoring with that little time left and you think you're right there, and then you let a mistake in special teams kind of be the thing that gets you. So, odd way to end it. And of course, that leads us then into what we had happen here with the selections. We get into the big discussion, leading up to the next day was, okay, does that good enough for SMU? A strong performance. It comes down to a wire. You lose by a field goal in your conference championship game. Don't you think you should probably still be deserving to be in the field? And of course, they were splitting hairs with them in Alabama, a 3-loss team out of the SEC, who we know very well has gotten the benefit of the doubt before in these situations. I think, the committee, obviously, I think we both feel like got it right. But I was also at the same time a little bit shocked because I think we were all waiting for that, here we go. We're going to, especially because the Big Ten had 4 teams in. I thought they're going to make damn sure that this is fair and even. They're going to have 4 SEC, but didn't go that way. And I was a little bit surprised.
Yeah, I mean, considering just when we talked about certain announcers, just their, feeling the necessity to freaking burn it in your brain of, how many teams are, what the Georgia game is when going every time in overtime saying if they make this, they get in the playoff or whatever.
Yeah.
It was good to see. Like, I mean, I know there's always stuff you can pick apart because there was plenty of complaints to be had, I guess. I honestly was pleasantly surprised. I thought I did about as good as you can do considering it's the first year of this deal. There's a lot of things to still kind of work out, and it's never going to be a perfect science, if you will. Like there's always going to be, if you have 12 teams, 13 teams going to be pissed off. You have 16 teams, the 17 and 18 teams. Like there's always something to argue about, which is fine. Like the debate part of it's fine, but when you're going to the fact of like this team or that team got screwed, now Florida State last year, that's a different discussion. I could hear that one, but this year I think you can't have 3 losses with 2 of those losses being the teams that barely snuck into a bowl and kind of claim that you're wrongly, anything was unjust against you. Like there's not much of an argument there, especially when you consider a team that was, whatever seconds away from winning their conference championship. Those 2 teams, those don't really like correlate those 2 discussions. So as far as you can, as bad as good as you can get, I think they did a pretty good job, especially in like the first year of having this type of format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did hear some comments ahead of time. This was, and I don't know, I can't even remember. This was, I think, asked of him before the game actually was played because they asked SMU coach Rhett Lashley, what if you somehow do lose this game, do you feel like your team should be in? And he's like, well, if that's not the case, then why should we play? Why would we be penalized for being in a spot that we earned? We earned to be in this game, and now you're going to penalize us? I mean, we've had this discussion before because of the limited amount of teams that were involved in either just 2 teams getting in or the 4 like it was before. So yeah, I mean, we're splitting more hairs here, but at the same time, I think he has a point, and it's going to be interesting down the road what happens, because there was some discussion from people that were involved in this from the get-go that thought, watch out, because conference championship games are going to go away, or they're going to have to do something different because of these types of scenarios. So I don't know. I do think that'll change, and I do think that motivation obviously will change as well. It's going to be how they work that. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it certainly is a good point, and I think luckily they did the right thing here to not make that a bigger issue than it could have been had SMU not gotten in.
I think you're almost going to have some type of like written or like somehow verbalized, like if you win your conference, you get an automatic bye, something like that, because that's about the only thing that's going to want to make these teams. I know they did it this year, but I don't know if is that in like the bylaws of this playoff. I don't know if I don't think it is.
No.
So
They've already said that next year they're not doing the top 4
so
conference. Yeah, it's just going to be seeded. Yeah.
Right. Well, then what are you gonna? I mean, is a team gonna try to like opt out? Like how are they gonna do that? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you can't. I guess it's not show up, and then will that mean a forfeit? Would that? I mean, I think that disqualify you from the playoff then. So, I mean, they don't. I'm not saying that they should have these conference championship games. I'm just saying like I don't know if the team really has that much leverage to do anything about it unless they come to some agreement. And everybody's got to be on the same page, and that does not happen when it comes to these college football discussions. It's always and at most maybe you can get a conference aligned, if that. That's even tricky, getting 15 to 20 teams on the same page, let alone all Division One teams. So yeah, it's going to be something to watch going forward, I guess, because I don't know how you really do solve it, and without some type of built-in, you got to have like some type of reward, because otherwise it is a punishment to play in that game. Because I mean, and I don't know that this is the case, but just when you look at it, kind of look at everything together. Like Ohio State is probably a team that benefited from not playing in their conference championship game, because if they lose twice, maybe they don't get in, and then it kind of has a domino effect to some other teams as well. Because if you lose twice to the same team, you can see a committee looking at you and saying, they're probably not deserving of that if they're gonna, if that team's in the field as well. So there's all those kinds of scenarios that could play out with these with or without these conference championship games. Maybe just get rid of them is probably like, I guess, the easiest thing to do. But then it's also tricky because it's like you don't play every team in your conference. So how do you have a conference winner then? That's what makes it hard with these big conferences. If you could, if you had 12 and you played 11 games, then you can decide it in whether it be through tiebreakers or whatever. But at least you've played everybody. But now that you don't, you kind of have to have that, don't you? The championship game, that is.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, everybody's created this problem. Like, we had a solution and then we ruined it. Like, this was going to work out just fine had not 8 million teams jump conferences. It would have been great. It would have been perfect. But
it's kind of like that panic mode there where you're just like, we're going to be screwed, left out with the, what in your hand.
Yeah.
And so everybody wanted to everybody wanted to jump on someone's, get whatever life preserver was out there they were grabbing onto.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. I think the one thing you could do, and this would require changing how it's set up a little bit, and it has to also require, I guess, kind of divorcing the bowl system a little bit too. Mm-hmm. But you could, say guarantee conference championship winners get a home game. Even if you are one of the teams that has a first round bye, you still get a home game in that quarterfinal round rather than playing at a neutral bowl site like they're going to do right now. So that would be the solution, I think. And who knows? Maybe we'll get there. And at some point too, who knows? Maybe we're getting to a point where there's a whole different setup and conferences aren't really a thing for college football anymore either. And your schedule's not determined by the school anymore. It's scheduled by the governing body, just kind of like the NFL does, for example. So that was one other interesting point that I did hear some coaches bring up. And it's valid because, like we just said, these conferences are large. You don't play everybody. sometimes we love to argue about strength of schedule. That's what everybody wants to, beat their drum about for the SEC. Well, you could have a team within the same league that has, like we've talked about, like how it looks right now for Indiana compared to Ohio State. Like, yeah, they had one tough game really that most of us think, and they got blown out when they played it. So, yeah, it's not even equitable within your own conference sometimes, and that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, and then even with like the bowl thing, I'm just like, I don't know what, like I think it's fine. I always enjoyed them, but I don't know what this like, I don't know what this like romanticism is with it and hanging on to it. Like to me, like the playoffs seems like a separate deal now that we've kind of gone to this bracket thing. So in the interest of like keeping the bowls and like having some type of like value to them, I would say just you don't want to get rid of some, but maybe you have to, but you keep like the big ones, like the ones they're playing in like the Rose Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Peach Bowl, and make those like the best of who didn't make the playoff. You know what I mean? Because how many people would rather play in that than go to like, and no offense to it, but the Tony the Tiger Bowl or whatever, like whatever it is, like it's like at least you're playing like, because anymore like other than like maybe the Rose Bowl, like these other ones they're just, I mean, they have some banners on there, but they're just using an NFL stadium for just renting one out for a day and throwing up Peach Bowl signs on it or throwing up Fiesta Bowl signs. Like they're all play the Cardinals, the Falcons, and then where's the Sugar Bowl? That's Saints play, right? So I mean, we're basically just playing in NFL stadiums with bowl signage. So there's no nostalgia there for me, at least watching it. Like maybe it feels different when you're playing it, I'm sure, but I mean, I know a lot of people kind of get annoyed with like how they kind of talk about the Rose Bowl and stuff, but at least it's still like the original stadium. Like it's still the same like venue and all that stuff. Like I know it does get kind of overblown sometimes on TV. Where they're always got to like show that view of the sunset and all sunset, that. Yeah, like that is annoying. But if you want to have some type of like, because that's what it seems to me. It's like the nostalgia of the bowl games. You grew up watching bowl games, But I mean, I guess to me that kind of started to fade too when you move from the Copper Bowl and the whatever whatever bowls you want to name, like the Peach Bowl, the all of them, and then it becomes like whatever. And Scooter's Coffee Bowl, and all these, and I get you need to make your money. I'm not saying anything against the people sponsoring, but it makes it a little bit trickier when you're trying to like romanticize something that's basically like corporate now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that has changed, and we've talked about that over time, just before this all became a thing, anyways. But, anyways, as far as the bracket is concerned, here is how it did shape up. If you have not seen already, which I'm sure you have, but the Oregon Ducks, obviously the number 1 overall seed. Very deserving so. When you don't lose a game and nobody else has done the same thing, you should probably be in that spot. So they're there. The 2 ends up going to Georgia. I guess no surprise there either. Winner of, what most people consider the next toughest league. And they get a nice victory there. So they're in the 2 spot. So they'll wait an opponent in the next round. They'll be playing at the Sugar Bowl, by the way. Oregon will be playing at the Rose Bowl for their quarterfinal round contest. The 3 seed ends up going to Boise State, so they will be in the Fiesta Bowl. That's where they will be for the 3 spot. And then the 4 spot will be at the Peach Bowl, and that will be Arizona State. So this was really actually a scenario that I didn't kind of even have in my mind when we were going into the weekend. The fact that if SMU lost, then that potentially would jump Boise to the 3 line rather than the 4. I mean, we were talking before about maybe the Big 12 team getting left out because Boise was the 4th best, conference winner. Well, they end up moving up to that 3 line because of the Clemson win. And then now here's Arizona State that gets to slide into that 4 spot where we didn't think that would happen. So interesting. And I think they did the right thing there as well. I mean, I do think that, they deserve the way they played in that title game and the way they played all season long, being a hot team, what hasn't been in a very competitive league, getting into that 4 spot. But definitely was different than, I think the outlook was going into the weekend. So it ends up being pretty interesting who those top 4 are. And it brings in the other side of the argument, I guess, and this is where what we just talked about comes into play a little bit. Those top 4 spots next time around are not automatically going to be conference championship winners. If you win your conference, I still think the scenario is you get in, but you do not necessarily qualify to be one of those top 4 spots. The argument, of course, being that, well, Boise State's ranked what, ninth or eighth, but yet in this they're third, kind of. So I get that a little bit, as far as you're talking about the best teams being in the best spot, but at the same time, like, you set it up for people to earn it in that position, and I guess I don't really have a beef with the way it is now.
No, not at all. And if you win your conference, you're probably going to have a pretty good shot at getting a bye. Being that there's only basically four conferences involved in most years. I mean, I don't know how much kind of Boise had to have kind of one of those unusual type of seasons to kind of be in the running there. In most cases, it's probably going to be the Big 10, Big 12, SEC, and kind of be running the roost there. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's not like a given, but I can't see many conference champions, with the exception of someone like a Boise or somebody making a run like that, not being one of the top 4 seeds. But who knows? Maybe somebody goes on a run with the 4 loss or something like that. So maybe that's why they're kind of protecting against that. So a team that could still get in, but maybe wouldn't be so high seeded. And with the way that you could have a season where with so many teams in the league, a 3-loss conference champion and that type of thing, and maybe even a 4 if you have a really crazy season. Who knows?
Yeah. So that brings us then also here to these first round matchups. So these will be the ones that are at home sites. So the 5 ends up going to the Texas Longhorns. I think probably properly seated there where they get slotted after the close loss in the SEC championship. They get to take on Clemson. Clemson is the 12. So that will be the 3 o'clock contest there coming up on the 21st for that game being played there, of course, at Darrell K. Royal. Ohio State will get to host at the Horseshoe as the 8 seed against the 9 Tennessee. That'll be on the 21st as well, 7 o'clock in the night slot there on ABC. Penn State, the 6 seed, they will host 11-seeded SMU. That'll be on the 21st as an 11 a.m. kickoff to get the day started there on TNT. And then it'll be 10-seeded Indiana at 7th-seeded Notre Dame. That'll be the Friday night game at 7 o'clock there on the 20th on ABC for that matchup. So we do end up with some pretty spicy first-round matchups here, and I think this is what is so exciting about this. We knew this was coming, but now that we get to see these matchups on even just on paper with the names walking into this first round, this should be a lot of fun to be able to watch this play out.
It's almost like that bracketology feel, but like amped up to when you're like, of course, like in the Elite Eight or Final Four, where it's like, man, I don't know which one to pick because you could see, things, all types of scenarios happening with these games. I know you want the bye or whatever, obviously, for the top 4, but I mean, playing that home playoff game would be a pretty nice little, I guess, runner-up prize or whatever you want to call it, like a nice parting gift there, because that'd be pretty fun to get some, especially when you get some of these teams from different type of climates and teams that don't play very often either. Like, when's the last time SMU and Penn State played? And even Indiana and Notre Dame, they're in the same state, but I don't recall them playing very often. So yeah, this should be a pretty good playoff here to watch. And then even you look ahead and start kind of everyone's trying to pick like what's the easiest road to the championship if there is one. But I guess can you imagine if Arizona State would have landed at that 3 and got a Fiesta Bowl as like they get a bye and then they basically get another home game? Like, that would have been wild.
Yeah, no kidding. They'd kind of hinted at that scenario beforehand, and that would have been crazy. And that's part of the. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the luck of the draw with the way it's set up now. But if you do go to the home games, and you get rid of that, you just know what you're going to get. So, I think it's this is going to be. These first round games is going to be what's, I think, the most exciting about this in general. Like you said, we love these venues. We love the atmosphere that's created. You're going to get a packed house. It's going to be fun. And that's the other downside to all of this that's happened. And we saw this over the weekend. There were a few conference championship games that were. There are a lot of seats left to watch these games, and I think that's partially because now fans, and this is just the nature of the way it's going to be, so I'm not saying that this is like a bad thing that you have to try to fix, but now you got to make decisions. You're not going to go to all these games. If your team is good enough, you think, to win and get to this quarterfinal and then get to this semifinal and this, only the wealthiest of the wealthy are going to be able to do that. So you got to kind of pick and choose and guess where you might go.
Yeah, even if you're at home, and I can't imagine that's a cheap ticket to come by. I mean, if you have to, and then you got to factor in travel for the next. I mean, you look at a team's gonna be, if someone from the first round makes it to the finals, that's and if let's say you're on the road, one of the lower seeds, that's basically four away games within the span of what, like 3 weeks or so, a little bit more than that, like a month's time. Like that's pretty crazy there to expect that. So hopefully that's maybe that's what they're thinking with the bowl setup and get some more local people that are used to going to like because I'm sure there's a lot of people that live in these areas where the big games are. It's kind of like their yearly deal. Like I know with College World Series, like I don't really care who's in it. I'll go to a game or two every year just because it's like regionally close and I don't have to travel that far and all that stuff. So maybe they're banking on that. And hopefully there is some good crowds, because you're right, there was some pretty sad states of affair in some of these locations.
Yeah, and I think that's just people are making the decision, like, do I want to try to go to this? Do I want to try to go if they make it to the playoff? Do I want to try to go to a bowl game if that's where they end up? So yeah, it's definitely decision time, and maybe, like you said, that's going to balance a little bit with the bowls. Like, you will get some of them that kind of get backfilled because there's other people that have interest, and then if there were home ones, obviously you're usually going to get a pretty good crowd for that, hopefully, you would think. So but even then, you're still pushing people a lot further down the road than they used to. Like, they used to go into 6-7 games a year, and now you're asking them to go to 4 more. Like it's pretty interesting, but obviously that's a good part of this problem to have. And
I tell you, I think a lot of people would take that, be like, we'll just that's what the credit card's for, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, put it on my tab. But yeah, we're gonna have some fun games. Obviously, like you said, you can take a look at this and feel like one team's got a great setup or another. I immediately heard people saying that it's a good spot for Texas. They in that 5 spot, and then you had a chance to play Arizona State there in the next round. You mentioned Ohio State. I mean, they could potentially, if they were to win at home, get a good matchup against Oregon in a game that obviously came down to the wire last time they played. So that's kind of intriguing. And then with Penn State, like you said, getting that in the 6th spot ended up being pretty good. They go play Boise State. You're playing SMU, 2 teams that aren't necessarily like familiar to this party. So maybe you have a little bit of an advantage there. Lots of intriguing storylines and matchups, and I think that's also part of what this is all about. Just like we see when we go to March, you get those same type of storylines for the way these matchups come to play.
I think probably maybe the best thing is like the there's not that lag time that there is a lot of times. Like, I mean, I know it's going to play out over a couple of weeks here, but you don't have to wait like over a month. Like, usually if the conference championships are done, then whoever's playing in the major bowl games doesn't play for over another month. Now they couple weeks and they're back at it. So I think I do enjoy that part of it. Like, let's just get it rolling. No need to dance around there. And I know they'll probably still have a 10-day break between the semifinals and finals, but what are you going to do about that?
Yeah. Just to play devil's advocate here too, I did hear somebody mention the one team that maybe isn't that excited about having a home game is Ohio State, because you're just coming off of that game against Michigan where you basically got booed out of the stadium. If things go south early in that game, like, do they turn on you? Like, it's one of those deals where you're almost better off being on the road just because of the situation and the scenario. I mean, at the end of the day, obviously, I think your fans are smart enough to be supportive of you in the right way. But that is an interesting little wrinkle, I thought, when somebody brought that up.
Yeah, if they go for midfield, we'll see what happens there, and then with pepper spray coming out there, or if they can, maybe, I mean, we might have to worry about throwing bottles again, the way the foul unruly the fans were last time they played.
Yeah. So that's a look at the playoff bracket and how it's shaped up. The other thing we did want to touch on here on the program, and obviously we've talked about this race a lot throughout the year as well, is who's going to be named the best player in college football. Heisman Trophy, the final 4 finalists have been announced now, and they are Oregon's Dylan Gabriel, Colorado's Travis Hunter, Boise State's Ashton Jeanty, and Miami's Cam Ward. Those are the finalists, as I think a lot of us expected would be the guys that get invited there to New York. And obviously, in our opinion, this has been a two-man race for a very long time, and I think very much for a lot of the right reasons between Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty. You know, I just think at the end of the day, it's kind of a damn shame, really, that we have to split it between these two guys. Because any other year, it'd be damn obvious for one of them. You take one of them out of the equation, and it's just like, yeah, they're gonna win in a landslide. I guess I think we're kind of both of the opinion that at least this should probably be a competitive vote. I think there's a lot of leaned bias towards Travis Hunter because of the situation, obviously with the attention he gets in the first place from where he's at, but then also the whole two-way player thing has gotten a lot of pub, and rightfully so. I mean, it is incredible what the guy does. And he's a terrific player. And like I said, any other year I wouldn't even question it. But the fact that you've got a guy on the other side who is like knocking down rushing records, like not just for his league, but like all time. Like he's pushing Barry Sanders now. He just needs, I think, like 120 yards or something here for the single season mark. So what he's done is incredible as well. So hopefully, I think this is going to be one that isn't a landslide one way or the other.
Yeah, that's the hope there. It's I'm not very confident in it when I pull up the latest odds, and Hunter's minus 2,500 to win it. That doesn't it's not really reassuring. So I don't know, man. I know you're not going to take advantage of the opportunity, but that's like one way be like those things that almost GTS almost like make a stand, but like just snub them, be like, screw you guys, like you don't respect me enough to, like, because what you're saying is correct. I mean, it's like you can't do anything else, and I don't know, when you pull up some of the stats, to me, Hunter's a little bit underwhelming when it comes to comparing it by like the actual numbers. Now I know a lot of what he does isn't like quantifiable, so
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit different, but it's strange. It's kind of, I don't know. It's an unfortunate year that like you don't. I've been last couple 3 years. It's like I don't really know who's gonna win because I don't know if anyone's
Mm-hmm.
like that good, like deserving of a
Yeah,
Heisman.
yeah.
And then of course this year you have two players that any other year would have been a landslide for them if they would have been up for it like last year or the year before. Either of them would have won
Mm-hmm.
easily. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just more of a, to me it seems more like a PR thing and like a popularity contest if you're gonna give it to Hunter, but. That's probably what it's looking like, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. There's been upsets before, so
Mm-hmm.
that's hopefully at least maybe can show somewhat of a respect to him and make it look somewhat of a close vote. Hopefully,
I did. There was brought up, I think, during that Boise broadcast on Friday night, and I thought it was a good point. Like, if anybody had already cast their vote prior to watching that game, you should not have a vote anymore. Like, why are you not? Why are you not taking into
yeah,
account everything that the you can see of that player? And obviously, I think he did his part to make a even stronger case the way that he played there in that game. You go look at the numbers here. The stats that he put up, obviously he had the big, the one big run that was, really fun to watch. But, he goes for 209 and a touchdown, averages 6.5 yards per carry. Another 200-yard game. That's significant. And if you're talking about the total body of work for a season, yeah, I that's what gets me is if somebody just, if they're not taking account into all the data points, then why are you even
yeah.
voting on it? Like that it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's been an issue with this award specifically, but other things, even just the polls and the weekly voting. It's like people that aren't even watching it, just like randomly checking a box and mailing it in or online or whatever. I don't know how they. I'm guessing it's probably like an online format these days, but
Mm-hmm.
just kind of that doesn't make a lot of sense if you're gonna, and not a lot of people, when the people that are Heisman voters, they're proud to tell you about it. So obviously they have some type of like value to it. Anybody you see online, it's like in their freaking bio on all their social media. So obviously it means something to
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
them.
yeah.
So I'm
Uh-huh.
just like, well, then actually value it. Then if it's that important to put in your bio, like put some time and effort into it because it doesn't take. Dude, it's easy to type his name in the freaking Google and then go to town. It
Yeah.
doesn't take that long to freaking find info these days. It's not you gotta seek out tape and like actually like watch film.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can literally find anything you want online in like 3 seconds. So go ahead and do that. But yeah, I mean, I don't have high hopes for it, but I guess we've been surprised before. That's what I'm holding on to. Just maybe they'll be the upset of the century.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The other thing that does annoy me a little bit, and I've heard this from a couple of people, of course, you get the argument of like, well, it's who he gets to play every week kind of thing. Well, they're only lost, by the way, and the reason they're the 3 seed in the playoff is a field goal lost to the number 1 team in the bracket, and he had over 200 yards in that game. So what do you what are we talking about here?
Well, I mean, I get if you're like, maybe playing for like like I don't even know what to say, like a old school, I guess, whatever you want to call it, like what group, what is it called now, the lower level or
Yeah,
whatever.
group of
If
5
you're
or whatever
playing
you
like
want.
for like a freaking whatever we talked about earlier, Louisiana Marshall, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
maybe then. But I mean, Boise, I mean, it's like the Mountain West isn't far off of much of these conferences these days. They're about as good as many teams as some of these other Power Five conference or Group of Five, whatever the hell they call it, Group of Four, whatever it is. But so it's not like that far. And even still, like, what are you gonna do? Like, okay, oh, we got a good. I think we have a player stuff for the Heisman. Hold on, let's rework our whole schedule this year
Yeah.
and say we're gonna it's not like college. It's not like the freaking Xbox where you can customize your schedule just like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you other than your conference, which even then it's probably like at least usually it's 2 years in advance, maybe like a year. But especially the non-con, you're agreeing to those deals 5, 6, 7 years ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's like a home and home thing. It's not like you can just go and freaking okay, we need to play a tougher schedule because we have a good player that we want to win the Heisman this year. It doesn't really work like that. So, and I don't think that they don't play they're not playing Mercer like Alabama did last time I checked. Like I mean they
Yeah,
haven't played
yeah.
any team like that. So I mean I don't know
No joke.
what that's just kind of like one of those like old tired arguments where it's like basically like the what somebody heard their friends say. They're like this repeating it.
Yeah. Yep. So that, yeah, we'll see how that comes out down the road. Obviously, with that vote, but that's kind of our 2 cents on all that. We will have a pick show coming up for you here later on this week. There is, of course, the one big college football game that'll take place still this weekend on the 14th there with the Army Navy, which should be, obviously a pretty fun game to look forward to here this year as well. Right now, Army's sitting as a 6.5 point favorite as it stands with that 2 o'clock kick there on Saturday. And then we've got some fight things going on. We've got, of course, NFL going on. So we'll probably maybe throw in a game or two there on that front. And then it's not going to be long. We're mixing in these bowls and then getting into the playoff and all of that. So we'll have plenty to still talk about. And I guess that's the other nice thing about this whole setup for us, too, is we get a little bit more to have fun with here down the stretch run.
Yeah, it'd be nice to mix in some playoff bracket in with the Gasparilla Bowl and that type of thing, the Bahamas Bowl. We mix in some. No, I mean, we're making fun, but no, I mean it's I like having all these games, but it is kind of like it is sometimes gets a little silly with the names. It's hard to keep track of them.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but yeah, at the same time, we're gonna watch them and we're gonna pick them
Oh
too.
hell yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. That's like I mean, it's kind of like I enjoy, of course, the bracket, the March Madness deal too, the Thursday and Friday especially.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost like it's so nice that when you get to actually use a little of your vacation days here at the end of the year and sitting home like on a Wednesday or Thursday and freaking just watching football and
Yeah.
relaxing. Like, I mean, you can't really. I like I said, March Madness is great, but I don't know this. You can't really beat this because don't usually get days off in the spring like I do at the end of the year. So I do enjoy these next few. I'm gonna enjoy the next couple of weeks here. It's the ESPN. I don't know if they still run it, but they need to bring that little ad back with the most wonderful time of the
Yeah.
year, the bowl. It's true, man.
It is true.
It's you can't really beat it. I mean, and not the best games, but it's still football. You don't really never complain about that.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. All right, that's what we got for you here this week on the show. Again, like, subscribe, and get the notification on the YouTube channel. We'll have that picks video out for you later on here this week, so that's where you'll find that. And then, of course, you can find the podcast there as well, but it's available in all the major platforms, whatever you listen, wherever. Search up Every Day We're Covering, and you'll get to be able to find the show. And then, of course, like and share and subscribe, all that good stuff there on that front. We'd appreciate it if you spread the word for us. If you want to chat with us, we're always available on socials, on Twitter, at SJM Bets, at Cherokee CP. That's how you can hit us up if you've got something that you're thinking. You got an opinion on the Heisman. You got an opinion on bowl games. You got an opinion on this playoff. We'd love to hear it. Interact with us, and we'll have some fun with it. So make sure you're locked in each and every week. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another round of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.